Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us. Tonight I'm going to show you how to make dinner rolls. And you can also use this recipe for slider rolls. Here's the recipe. I'm going to go over this with you, but you can pause and write it down. So we're going to start with 4 cups of either all-purpose or bread flour, your choice. This is all-purpose. 1 cup of whole milk, 6 tablespoons of unsweetened unsalted butter, 3 whole eggs, 1/3 cup sugar. I've got here a tablespoonful of instant yeast. You can use active dry, either one. And this is a teaspoonful of salt. So that's all the ingredients you need. Let's get started. So we're going to start on the stove with a heavy bottomed pan. This is my 1 cup milk, and I'm going to cut the butter into smaller pieces. I've got this milk on medium heat. Now we want to just heat this milk up to about 110 degrees or so, and it may get a little above that, but we're going to melt the butter and then turn it off, and if it's too warm, I'll let it cool down. I keep thinking I have it at the right temperature, and then I end up having to let it cool down. You might get it right the first try, but it's really important that it not be over about 115 degrees. And so we'll do what we need to do to make sure that it's about 110, 115 degrees. If you're any hotter than that, it may kill your yeast, so this is important. And I really suggest you have a little thermometer. I may check this a couple times. Probably not as complicated as I make it, but you know, I just want to make sure that this is right because the bread depends on this. As soon as your butter's melted, you're going to put it into your mixer bowl, and you know, you can do this by hand, but it's really pretty hard because the batter is really thick. So my temperature's about right, and you know, anything between about 95 to 115 is going to work. You just don't want to get any higher or lower than that. So now we're going to sprinkle in our yeast, and as I said, this is instant yeast. You can use active dry yeast, and I have a tablespoonful here. The original recipe called for 1 pack, which is 2 1/4 teaspoons full. So you should be all right with that. I just always buy it in bulk. I don't buy the little packs. And then we're going to stir this up. And it's pretty bad to lump. Get as many of the lumps out as you can, but it's not crucial. It's not critical. But I think I'm going to have to get my whisk because I don't want great big lumps in there. And then when I get this mixed in, I'm going to just add a little bit of the sugar. I don't know, a couple tablespoonful, and mix that in. Now when we get this mixed, I'm going to go away and leave it for 5 minutes. You know, my kitchen's at about 75 degrees, and this is called proofing. We're going to make sure that our yeast is active and good. And in 5 minutes, you should have a foamy top. And that shows you that you've got good yeast and that it's already started working. So I'll give this a little swish. And then we're going to start adding our other ingredients. And you just add them all. The only thing I've done that you didn't see was I mixed my salt in with my flour. So here we go. That's my sugar, what's left of it. Then we're going to start putting in the flour. I'm going to put half the flour in to start with, approximately. And you could just dump it all in, but it mixes up just a little bit better if you put it in half and then mix it and then the other half. Now this is, by the way, King Arthur unbleached. There's 3 eggs. And we're going to start this mixing. And that's it. That's all the ingredients. And I'll let this go a little bit to get it started. Then I'll add the flour a bit at a time. Now I'm going to turn this up onto about medium speed. And I'm going to warn you, this dough never gets as stiff as a loaf of bread dough gets. This is a soft dough. and you'll have to help it a little bit by pulling it out to the middle. And I'll do that several times as I'm getting all the ingredients together and the flour blended in. And I'm going to add this. You know, I have one of those covers, but it makes a glare from the light and then you can't see what I'm doing, so I'll just live with the mess. And I'll show you why. You see that big glare? You can barely see. So we'll just do it without the cover and then we'll sweep. So I've got it almost all in, helping it along the way. And I just kind of want you to observe the batter, because if you're used to making like a loaf of bread, either wheat bread or white bread, and you're looking for that, you're never going to get it. This is going to be more the consistency of, say, biscuit dough. It's going to be very loose and tacky. And you might think you're doing it wrong, but you're not. So I'm adding the last of the flour, and this whole process has taken about 5 minutes. I've let it beat on a medium speed. I'm adding the flour as I go. And when you get all your flour in, you want to stop and scrape it down again, because sometimes some flour can get caught up under the dough hook. The way this bowl is shaped, that can happen. See the texture of it. It's kind of gummy looking. It's almost like chewing gum. It's a little thicker than chewing gum. So when I get everything mixed together and it's scraped down, I'm going to turn the beater on medium and let it beat for about 5 minutes. And it won't change the texture a whole lot, but it does need to beat. I'll be back. We're almost done with the 5 minutes, and I just want to let you see what we're looking for. It's very smooth and elastic. It doesn't all come up on the dough hook. It's not like a loaf of bread. You can't do the window pane test to make sure that it's beat long enough. Just beat it for 5 minutes on medium speed. You'll be fine. After 5 minutes, I'm going to turn this out on a heavily floured sheet. You may want to use a spatula for this. I'm just kind of limited in my space here with the camera, so it's easier for me just to do it with my hand. I have to do things a little clumsily. But I'm going to turn this out and let you see what it looks like. And don't panic. The first time I did this, I kind of panicked. I thought, oh my gosh, I need a lot more flour. But the texture of the finished product is much different. So it makes sense that the texture of the dough is much different. So I'm working it around. I'll work a little bit of flour into it. And I am going to knead it just a little bit. Mostly just to work that in and to get it into a ball. And you know, it tends to be a little sticky, so you're going to need more flour than you usually would. But I'm just working this around and shaping it into a ball so that I can let it rise. And it really works pretty easily once you get that feel of it. It's almost like playing with Play-Doh. So we're going to pinch this bottom here, pull it all together. And then I've got my proofing bowl over here. You can use any bowl that's big enough. You know, I have a plastic bowl with a cover that I use just for bread. And you want to oil the bottom of it really well. I've got my olive oil here. See, there you go. That's my dollar store proofing bowl. Such a good investment. So here's my olive oil. We're going to dump a little in and I'll work it around. And I'm going to work a little bit onto the bottom of the lid for this, just in case it were to rise up that much. It probably won't. And we'll put that in. Now, normally I would tell you to put your bread in and turn it over so that both sides are oiled. This dough is pretty tender, so I'm going to brush a little of the flour off there, and then I'm going to just drizzle some oil on top and spread it around with my little silicone brush. And this is just so it doesn't form a crust. You want it to stay soft and pliable. Now I've got my oven preheating, and it's really early, but it's mostly to create a warm spot in the kitchen. And you're preheating your oven to 375. So I'm going to set this in a warm spot for 45 minutes. and let it rise and wash my hands until it's double in size. And here we go. It's a little more than double in size. That's okay. This is a very tender bread. And if you can see, it's very, very puffy. So just so you'll know, I'm going to knead it again because this is going to be really full of a lot of gas and a lot of air bubbles. It's a very tender dough and it's very active. So I'm going to punch it down before I take it out of the bowl. See all the air bubbles? You want to try to break as many of those as you can. And I'm poking lots of holes in it to let the air escape. And it's so active that it's just bubbling up as I go. So really give it a good poke. And then we'll turn it out onto my floured pastry sheet again. And I'm going to flour it and knead it a little bit more. Now this recipe is going to make 12 slider rolls or 16 dinner rolls. So how you shape it and cut it now depends on which one you want. And I've made both. I'll show you a picture of the slider rolls. I'm working on dinner rolls right now. So we want to cut 16 pieces. And really the recipe calls for a 9 by 12 pan. I don't have an exact 9 by 12 pan. So my shaping and fitting is not exact, but I'm going to cook these on my breakfast griddle, my cast iron breakfast griddle. It's about as close as I can get for a 16. So I'm working it into a square about the size of my griddle, and I'm really beating it hard. I'm slapping it. I'm getting all of the bubbles out before I start cutting. Now you may want to weigh this dough. I'm going to eyeball it, and I'm going to cut 4 squares as even as I can, 4 sections, and then I'll cut each of those 4 sections into 4 sections, and that'll give me the dinner rolls. If you are making the slider rolls, you're going to cut 4 sections, and then you're going to make 3 sections out of each one, and that'll give you a roll big enough for a small hamburger patty or a small piece of chicken for a slider. You can cut this again and make them even smaller, just depending on how you like your dinner rolls. But we're going with 16 here because they'll fit pretty nicely in my square pan. So I've cut my 4 sections as evenly as I could, just eyeballing. And that's my pan. Let me get it over here. I've oiled my cast iron breakfast skillet. I've had this pan for 50 years. I love it. So we're going to make this into another approximate square and cut 4 sections for it. If you do want to weigh it, weigh the whole thing and then divide by 16, and that's about how big you want your rolls. I can tell right now that one's too big. So I'm just rolling it under, folding it under, and I'll pinch the bottom. And I'm going to shape these sort of roughly. Whoops, bubble. Sort of roughly into a rectangle. A square rectangle. They don't have to be exact because once they rise, they're going to take their shape from each other, from how you put them on the pan. So see, that's sort of a square shaped roll. And I'm going to put them on my skillet, just barely touching, so that when they rise and they bake, they'll touch together and they'll be what I call pull-apart rolls, like steakhouse rolls. So you can shape that. Well, let me shape that one a little bit better. Yeah. You can just keep folding them over and under until you get it the way you want it. There you go. And I'll put it in the pan. Now I'm going to finish these up. I'll do all 16 of them in this pan, and then I'll come back and show you what I've got. So they're all done and ready for the last rise. I've got some plastic wrap here. I'm going to put a little olive oil on here so that it doesn't stick to the rolls. Ideally, you want to cook these in a 9 by 12 pan with high sides. I don't have that, and you may not have it. So you can do it in another pan. But because there's no high sides on this, my plastic wrap is going to touch these rolls. And so I want to make sure that it's oiled really well so that it doesn't catch and pull the air out of them when I'm ready to put them in the oven. So you're going to put these back in your warm spot and let them rise for 20 minutes. We'll be back. Ready for the oven. Now before you preheat your oven to 375, set the rack to the middle of the oven. These need to bake for 20 to 25 minutes. If you're making the slider rolls, the bigger ones, they need to bake for 25 to 30 minutes. We'll just check them by the color. I'll be back. What do you think? Is your mouth watering yet? This was 20 minutes and they are nice and golden brown. My oven's not really even heating, so the middle ones are not quite as brown, but we're going to butter these up while they're still good and hot. And then I'll take them out and put them on a rack to cool, but I won't let them cool much. I'm going to serve them hot, not like loaf bread, which you can't cut until it cools. You can serve these hot, and oh boy, people are going to love them. So these are crunched up just a little bit because my pan's not the perfect size, but they are high and light. They smell wonderful. This is going to be such a great addition to dinner. And I have to tell you, when my mother bit into one, I made them last night and tonight. When my mother bit into one, she said, "Now don't lose that recipe." So let me just show you the texture here. Break it open. You see it's light when they're still steamy. And it's just as soft as it can be. Just a wonderful dinner roll. I'm going to put a little butter on this one because, you know, I have to test it. I have to tell you for sure if it's as good as it looks. And it looks mighty good and it smells mighty good. So I've got a little more butter I'm going to put on it. And I just have to tell you, it's like air in your mouth. They're just puffy and light, and it melts when you bite into it. I can't explain the texture. You just have to try these. I think it's time for you to make them. I'm going to give you a little close-up here just to tempt you to make these. And as promised, here are the slider rolls. They're a little bit bigger. Big enough for your little sandwiches. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. Hope to see you again tomorrow.